Welcome back to another episode of the Newt News Podcast. It's me and Sandy today. Andrew's on a flight today, like his icon and idol, Shohei Ohtani. So you can track his flights, figure out where he's going. He's been at spring training the last full week. But Sandy, you've been outside, it looks like, quite a bit. So you've got some sun. I can't say the same for myself. How are you doing?
Yeah. It's been good. Had a really nice spring break and everything. Actually got to record Newt News from I think my 9th state now, which is kind of crazy from California. So that was pretty fun. But something that hasn't been a ton of fun is watching these Cardinals injuries pile up. That has been absolutely brutal lately. How have you been doing, Josh?
Good. I feel like I'm a little more optimistic about it all since the last few days. So we'll get into it as we're going, but that's kind of the point of this episode today is we're going to do a little bit of buy or sell, talking about different narratives surrounding the Cardinals right now, good, bad, and ugly. And if we're buying it, if we're selling it, all the jazz. And so, yeah, we'll just, I think the conversation kind of just flow today because a lot of these will kind of all be conversation points themselves. But if you guys have stuff you want us to talk about as we're going through, throw them in here. For our audio listeners, I'll try to make sure that I speak these out loud as well, but they'll be on the screen pinned for if you're watching YouTube right now. The first one I think we should talk about, and we'll address from probably multiple angles in these buy or sell, is the center field situation. And I want to start off with Dylan Carlson, even though obviously the hot name's Victor Scott. Buy or sell, Sandy, Dylan Carlson won't reach his potential in St. Louis.
That's so hard because there's multiple layers here. It's one thing if Dylan Carlson's just not that good. It's another thing to say he won't reach his potential and then he'll go somewhere else and be good. And that's what's so worrying.
Maybe we could frame it as like whether he reaches it or not, it won't be here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to buy
he could not reach it somewhere else, but he's for sure not going to reach it here.
Okay.
You're going to buy it?
I think I'll buy that. I'm going to buy that. Carlson has had a brutal spring. He was not good last year. He struggled the year before. We're now multiple years removed from his really exciting rookie of the year finish season. And I don't know. I'm kind of sick of the Carlson experiment at this point. I don't really know what we're getting from him anymore. He's not a guy I feel comfortable when I see him up at the plate. I honestly don't get excited to see him hit anymore. It's very different than it was a few years ago when he was this up and coming potential star. So I think I'm going to buy that. I just don't see what his role is with this team. We've talked about it a lot in recent weeks. We don't even know how they're going to use him. Victor Scott's coming on strong. He's going to push for that spot. So yeah, I'm going to buy.
Yeah, I think I'm going to buy it too. Part of it is, like you said, I don't see the confidence with him anymore.
Yeah.
He hit the home run today, which is great. But even if he gets a runway, so say they don't do Victor Scott to start opening day, they do give Dylan Carlson the chance. Depending how long Edman's out, it's not a long amount of time for Dylan Carlson to keep the job. And then assuming Nootbaar's back even before Edman is, Dylan Carlson's the 4th outfielder, and I really like Victor Scott, someone I think can supplant Edman at some point, but I just don't really see Dylan Carlson supplanting him. So I'm I don't really know how he reaches his potential as a part-time player outside of injuries. And again, the struggles against right-handed pitching just real.
So bad.
And it just kind of feels like another one of those Cardinals outfielders that is just not going to be who we thought he was going to be in St. Louis, but maybe that happens later. So I'll also go sell on this. It doesn't mean he can't be a productive player for the Cardinals, but I'm starting to lean toward, I was optimistic this year that he could be a good 4th outfielder, a good platoon bat. He'll get a chance and redeem himself a little bit. And I'm starting to think there's a world where Dylan Carlson doesn't even last most of the year with the Cardinals. And that's a whole other story. And I think a lot of other things have to happen, but I'm starting to think those things are happening, which kind of cuts him out of the picture, even if he's not bad. But then he also hasn't been great in spring. So I'm not a big spring training stats guy, but it's kind of been rough so far. I don't think it's hard to deny that. But I think this conversation is hard to have removed from the Victor Scott conversation. So let's open that can of worms next. And I'll kind of give my take off the top and then let you run and cook with this, Sandy. Buy or sell, Victor Scott should be the starting center fielder. And I'm going to try not to do this on many of the takes, but I'm going to soft sell this one or soft buy this one.
Okay.
So I'm not all in on Victor Scott as a center fielder. In my heart, I'm all in. I really am. Yeah. And I think if I was making the decision, Victor Scott would be the center fielder on opening day. I am slightly concerned about the potential of how it could hurt his development. And so I think it's hard to know. Like even the experts in player development don't always know. So, but if the Cardinals have concerns about, hey, he's just like the stats look good, but he's not he's not doing the things needed to be a consistently good hitter or consistently develop at the major league level, then I'm okay with them starting him in AAA because I just think he has that much potential as a player, and I don't want to ruin that for short-term gain. Now,
Sure.
he looks ready to me. And I don't think he's like so mentally fragile that like if they play him for 2 weeks and it's not working and they send him to AAA, I don't think it's going to crush him. What would crush him is if they use him like for 4 months straight and he's terrible and then they finally pull the plug, but I don't see them doing that.
Yeah.
But if they do like Jordan Walker last year where they pull him up the first month and then they have clear things he needs to work on, to send him down, he works on it, comes back up, I think he's good with that. So I'm excited about it. I think he'd be a great option. I think to me right now, he is the best option that's healthy. He's better than Dylan Carlson, in my opinion, right now. And I just think there's so much higher of a ceiling with Victor Scott as your center fielder than Dylan Carlson right now. But I do understand if the Cardinals think it's going to hurt his development or has a high likelihood of doing it, not doing it, because I don't want 2027 Cardinals to significantly suffer because Victor Scott's development got halted. And we're talking about him in 3 years like we are Dylan Carlson right now. Now, a point that someone brought up the other day, which I think is really interesting, because Kyle Reese on Twitter was someone who kind of brought this up a lot of like, hey, you need to be careful with these young guys. And we just lost Sandy. So I'm going to continue this point and might do some buy or sells but on my own. But I think I can kind of keep this going with what we've got, is that if Victor Scott is not great offensively, he does have elite tools. Here we go. Sandy's back. So what I was kind of going there is that, like, unlike Dylan Carlson, if he wasn't like, he's like, he was supposed to be good at a lot of things, but he wasn't necessarily a great player at anything. Like, he didn't have an 80, 75, 70 grade tool of anything. He was above average at a lot of things. Victor Scott, I think the fallback is that even if he's not hitting, he'll be an elite defender, an elite speed guy. So he provides value in a bunch of other ways so that hopefully his confidence stays up. It's almost like Yadier Molina early in his career was a terrible hitter, but man, he was so good defensively, it didn't matter. I think Victor Scott, I don't see his confidence falling like that. And I don't see him in 3 years, like, being relegated to like, does this guy have any value anymore? Like Dylan Carlson? Cause I think some people say like his floor is Billy Hamilton, but Billy Hamilton didn't really get on base at all. And I don't think that's Victor Scott's story. I think he'll beat out ground balls. I think he's shrewd with the bunting, all that kind of stuff. And then he's an elite defensive center fielder, which Billy Hamilton was like a pretty good second baseman. Yeah. He wasn't elite at that. And then he went to the outfield later, but he wasn't elite either. So that's where I kind of don't worry too much about him like totally destroying his development. But again, sorry, that's a long-winded way to say it. Yes, I'm in on his opening day center fielder, but I'm not. If the Cardinals come back, if they say that he's not better than Dylan Carlson, like Dylan Carlson's the guy, I'm going to be like, okay, whatever. But if it's because, hey, we think he'll be way better long term if we give him some more seasoning, then I'm like, okay, I get it, especially if Edman's coming back soon.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. The Edman story really impacts how I deal with this, because if Tommy Edman misses the entire first half, like, Victor Scott has to play, because we can't get through an entire 4 months of baseball with Dylan Carlson. I just can't do that. The Cardinals shouldn't be interested in doing that. Cardinals fans should be upset if that's what's happening. But like you're saying, there are real risks here. And I like that people have brought that up, especially on Twitter, where it's like, yeah, if we pull Victor Scott up too early and his development gets ruined, that's bad. And it's bad for the organization long-term, like you're saying, because we don't have center field depth. That's why when we were ranking the most important prospects months ago on this, Victor Scott was like the number one guy for some of us. It's because the Cardinals don't have something else. It's not like Thomas Sajazi, where we have guys that play that position in the majors already, and we have interesting guys in the minors that play that position too. Victor Scott is kind of like the only center fielder the Cardinals have for the next several years who's any good. So it's really hard. But I think I'm with you. I think I'm buying, just because I don't want to watch Dylan Carlson for multiple months. And I think Victor Scott's better now. And I think the floor with Victor Scott is so much higher than Carlson, and the ceiling is higher. Like, both levels, both outcomes are better with Victor Scott, because like you're saying, Victor Scott can accrue this value that Carlson probably can't anymore. Carlson,
Yeah.
he's a decent runner. He's got an okay arm. He's an okay fielder, like you said, and he's just been awful at the plate. Even if Victor Scott struggles at the plate, I have difficulty believing it'll be that much worse than Carlson. Like last year, he had a 74 WRC plus, and like he was getting a lot of opportunities against lefties who he's supposed to mash. Carlson cannot hit right-handed pitching. So it just, I don't know. I'm going to buy it. I understand I have reservations about buying it, but I'm going to buy this take.
Yeah. And I think to your point too, like, I don't think we've seen it in spring training, but it'll become even like bigger of a deal in the regular season when you have Victor Scott as your 9-hole hitter and he's getting on base and then he's wreaking havoc on the base pass and setting up Donovan, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Nolan Gorman on like, I mean, again, we've seen pieces of him in spring training, but like it'll actually matter where we're stealing runs or we're starting rallies from the bottom of the lineup in a way that, again, Dylan Carlson can get on base and do damage when he's doing stuff well. It just feels like it's been a while since he's been that guy. And at some point, like I know he was rookie of the year or finished third in rookie of the year in 2021, but like it's 2024 now, and things are just ever since the second half of 2022, things just have not gone well. So I'm playing the hot hand. I'm excited about it. But again, if the Cardinals clearly have a reason for why it's not going to be good for his development, I get pumping the brakes, but I just don't see that. Now let's finish up the outfield conversation with another buy or sell that I think is interesting. Buy or sell, Sandy. Do you think the outfield situation is murkier than we thought?
Absolutely. I think there are a couple of key developments here. The Tommy Edman injury is part of it. The drama with Victor Scott and Dylan Carlson's part of it. Jordan Walker's defense might not be as good as we hoped it'd be this year. It's been pretty bad so far in spring from what I've heard. I'm not at the games, obviously, but there are real questions there. If Jordan Walker is a terrible defender again this year, what do you do? Do you consider moving him to a DH role? That crowds that. It's already crowded with Contreras, who's not going to catch as often as the Cardinals want. So yeah, it's a lot murkier than we thought. We have real questions about who's healthy and who's not, and who's actually going to be on the roster and who's not, and who's going to contribute and who's not. It's always murky with the Cardinals because they prioritize versatility so much. You always have guys moving around. It's just part of being a fan of this team. Brendan Donovan is an outfielder and an infielder and a DH, and that's just kind of what you get. But it's like even more so this year for all the reasons I just said. You have no idea how the Cardinals are going to treat Alec Burleson. It feels like one day we're considering starting him, and then the next day he's not even breaking camp. Like, I don't really know where to go here. To be honest, I have no idea what the outfield is going to look like on day one. And now the Nootbaar injury happens, and it looks like he's not going to be ready for opening day. So, yeah, it's a lot murkier than we thought. I'm buying this take 100%.
I'll actually sell it because I think like the murkiness is created from the fact, I think more so because Nootbaar's out. And so like if it was just Edman out, then it's like, okay, Dylan Carlson or Victor Scott's in at center field and we're good. But now that they're both out, now that's where it's like, okay, is it Victor Scott or Dylan Carlson in center? And is it Alec Burleson or Dylan Carlson or Brendan Donovan in left field? Like I think that creates some of it. But I do agree, like Walker has been concerning. We'll get into that defensively again. And it's like, okay, not that I expected him to be a Gold Glover by now, but I thought it'd be a little bit better than what we've seen. So, but again, spring training, the complexes are different than major league stadiums. Outfielders have talked about that before. That's actually sometimes harder to field in the outfield because of the wind and everything. But I'm not gonna let Jordan Walker make those kinds of excuses right now. So, but in general, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Even Edman being out, like I don't think he was, especially if Victor Scott plays center field. The big win of having Tommy Edman out in center field is you have an elite defensive center fielder now. Well, Scott's going to do that, and you weren't really expecting Tommy Edman to be a significant bat in the lineup. So that's where I'm like, that's where I don't think is a huge deal to me personally. But if Nootbaar is going to keep missing time over and over again, and Edman's out a long time, and Victor Scott proves he's not ready, then it's like, okay, it is murkier than we thought. But also, like, how many outfields in baseball aren't murky when you start removing two of your starting outfielders? So, but I think there's some questions from Ray in the chat about like, what do you do if Edman and Nootbaar come back and you have Scott on the roster? I think where the murkiness comes through is, okay, if Scott's really good, to me, Edman moves to a utility role, and it's kind of like, sorry, Edman, like we love you, you're valuable, but opportunity knocked and Victor Scott answered the call. and he's our long-term center fielder. And Edman slides into this backup outfielder, backup shortstop, backup second baseman role where at that point you could potentially get rid of Brandon Crawford because you've got Edman backing up shortstop, he can back up center field, and then I think you can roster one of Burleson or Carlson on the bench, and the other one won't be able to make the roster because they're not going to cut Matt Carpenter, unfortunately. So I think that's how you kind of make the pieces work, and then you have Scott in left, Scott in center, Nootbaar in left, Walker in right, with either Burleson or Dylan Carlson off the bench. Tommy Edmonds like that backup center fielder, backup shortstop. And then to your point, the Cardinals in the past few years keep moving guys around. At that point, you could have Nootbaar playing left field every day, Victor Scott playing center field every day, Jordan Walker playing right field every day, Goldie, Arenado, Wynn, Gorman all have set positions, and then Donovan slides in at a position every other day to kind of fill in for guys. So he's moving around. And then you have Edman, who's a utility guy at the bench. It's not a big deal because he's not a primary starter moving around. So that's kind of where I see all the pieces working in an ideal world, but we'll see. I do think it's fair that it's murky, but I just don't buy it as like it's murky because there's injuries right now. And I just think that's why, but I agree with all your points. It makes sense. I just think in a 2 or 3 weeks when Nootbaar's back, it'll feel a lot less murky to me.
I agree.
But who knows? We'll have to see.
Once you know, like your starters are going to be available, then it's not nearly as scary. But not knowing the extent of the Nootbaar injury still, not knowing exactly how long he's going to be out and how the Cardinals handle the beginning of the season, like it's kind of scary to me. And we know that the Cardinals need to get off to a strong start because last year they buried themselves in April and it was over. Like the season was over on May 1st last year for all intents and purposes. And so the Cardinals have to not do that. And, you know, when you're starting with these injuries and your new ace and all that, and you're starting in LA against this super team the Dodgers have built, like to me, all of that inspires a little bit of trepidation.
Totally. That's fair. So we'll see. I guess back to the point again, like if Nootbaar's out longer than a week or two, I think then retroactively I look back now and be like, it's murkier. It's a problem. The Edman one, I just think like the drop off from Edman to Scott or the drop off from Edman to Carlson. Yeah. But we'll see. That's kind of part of the games here. Last outfield centric question, and you kind of open the door and I'll give my thoughts and I'll let you run with it too, is buy or sell. We should be concerned about Jordan Walker's defense right now. I'm going to go soft buy again here. Because again, I kind of alluded to earlier, I think I wish I would have seen so far a little bit more from Walker. I do think, to me, it kind of looks like how it did at the end of last year, which was better than the beginning. Like there's not the stat, like Fangraphs and stuff. It's not easy to go back and like, you can't do splits of defensive stats. You can't look at his defensive stats from September or August. But I remember going back and looking at game logs and I remember I had a back and forth with someone. And his defense statistically was getting a lot better as the season went on. He was still below average, but he wasn't historically bad. And you could see like he went from like negative 25 DRS and he was like raising to like the negative 18 range and stuff. It's like, okay, so it's like getting better. It's not great. I think you saw him get better at the end of the year. He still wasn't good, but then I don't feel like it looks a lot better than it did at the end of last season. But again, it's too early to tell for me. I do think personally, this is probably this is probably playing into. I don't think it's the reason why they're not extending Goldschmidt yet, because I don't think there's a world they want Walker to be a primary DH. And so I think they want that position open potentially for Walker. But if I had to bet, I'm giving it a 75% chance that Jordan Walker is in right field next year and not first base in 2025, because I just think they want him to grind this out and figure it out. Even if he ends up just being below league average, as long as he's not historically bad, I think they'll live with it. Because I don't think they want to move him to first base, and there's no guarantee he'll be any good defensively at first base either. So it's not like it's not a guaranteed fix. But yeah, we'll see. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, I think, like you said, I want to see more. I haven't seen actual improvement. It kind of looks the same, which is tough when you hear all this stuff. Oh, he's working with these fielding gurus in the organization all offseason. And we hear we know that Jordan Walker has awesome intangibles. Like, that's a well-known fact. He's a great kid, very impressive, has spent all the right time with all the right people. and you want him to be better than he is right now in the outfield. And I think there are two main reasons the Cardinals won't move him at least to DH. One of those is the DH situation is very cloudy. You have Brendan Donovan, who's going to get DH time. You have Thomas Saggese, who could come up and get DH time. You have Wilson Contreras, who's going to get a lot of time at DH. You need to rest Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt more than you have before, especially as they get older. There are just reasons that you don't want somebody all of a sudden getting 135 to 140 DH starts. The other thing is you don't want to waste Walker's athleticism. Like, he's an athletic guy with good tools. Walker's fast. He's very athletic. He has great coordination. And those are the types of things that generally translate to being an okay outfielder. It's inexperience that's the problem. It's not a lack of physical gifts. And so I can't see the Cardinals wasting that. I can't see them wasting his speed at first either. And so, like you're saying, I think that they're just going to make him ride it out. But that does concern me because the Cardinals need every advantage they've got right now in what's going to be a tighter division than we thought it would be. And with a team that has serious holes. And you don't just want to add more holes, especially self-inflicted holes, like having a guy who's not capable of playing the outfield in the outfield for 150 games because you hope Jordan Walker gives you that kind of volume. So all of that is quite worrying to me. But at the same time, I do think Walker is going to get better. I fully believe that. And so if we're talking about 2025, I'm selling this. Like, I think just with experience, Jordan Walker is good at baseball. He's a really talented guy. I think he's going to get better. I think he's going to be a fine outfielder. And I think there's a good chance this year that he's just below league average. So I'm going to soft sell this because I'm not super worried, but I see reasons to be concerned. And if someone did come to me and say, I'm really concerned, I would understand. And I wouldn't tell them they were wrong.
Yeah. I think also too, like, if he's only slightly below league average instead of historically bad for a lot of the season, and then his bat also takes the jump we think it will be, then it's like, I mean, last year he was especially after he got called back up, his bat was like 20% above league average.
He was awesome.
So like he was really good, but like if he takes another step and is like really, really, really good at the plate, then like we're not going to be as like concerned about the defense.
I can live with it at
right
that
now.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. So some of that will depend on that, but we still do need him to keep getting better. I do want to know from your perspective, I think if I had to bet, I think Goldschmidt will be back. I do like right now. But if it's not Paul Goldschmidt's the first baseman next year, my bet is that's when they move Nolan Gorman to first base. That's totally like just a guess on my part. But I think like you've got Brendan Donovan, Thomas Saggese, they can play second base. You have Mason Winna short. Arenado's going to be around for a while, so there's no point in waiting for Gorman to play third base. That's just a random thought. I think Brendan Donovan could play first base, but you like that versatility, so I don't think you want to pin him there. I could see Alec Burleson there, but it doesn't feel like, I don't know. I think they'll value Thomas Saggese over him, so I think getting Thomas Saggese a position at second base or something will mean more to them. And then my hot take would be Wilson Contreras at some point moves to first base, but I think 2025 is too soon. But his bat's good enough to play first base. People don't realize it. But if you had to bet right now, I just gave all the options, but who would you be like next man up in your opinion after Goldschmidt? For some reason he's gone in 2025.
Yeah, this is hard. I like you're saying, first off, I think Goldschmidt stays, but if he doesn't stay, I don't want to move Gorman personally, because Gorman's taken such a big step forward defensively at second base. People don't realize just how awful he was his first year. And he was about league average last year. And I think if he takes another step forward, he could actually turn into a pretty productive second baseman. He has a good enough arm that I don't know if I want to waste that, because he was developed as a third baseman. So we know he's got that tool. It's not great. It's not like an Arenado level arm, but it's good. I think it's going to be Saggese at first, just because he also has some fielding question marks. He's not super versatile. I think Gorman might have more versatility than Saggese has. Unless Saggese becomes capable of playing the corner outfield like Brendan Donovan, then I would give him the nod. Saggese's not supposed to be a shortstop from what I've heard. He's not as quick on his feet as Donovan is. So that's maybe where I'd go. I'd go with him. Burleson's a possibility, but I don't know. I don't really see that happening. I think Burleson, if he has a future here, it's like as a corner outfielder.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think the part where I maybe move Saggese from it is I feel like his bat probably doesn't profile to be like a really good first baseman. Fair. And then also the Gorman back issues. Like I feel like maybe being at first base is maybe safer. And I might be projecting there. I don't know. But anyways, who knows? We're thinking way too far in advance. So let's move off the outfield murkiness And let's look at maybe the rotation a little bit, which is what we've spent. It's so weird that we spend the whole offseason talking about the rotation, and then we talk to Katie and we talk on here. We're talking about the offense more, which is not where I thought we'd be having debates lately, but that's just how spring training's gone so far. But buy or sell, the rotation is worse than we thought coming into the year.
I'm going to buy. And this is even with all of the consternation about how bad the rotation is, but like Lance Lynn just looked terrible. And I don't know. I know I shouldn't overreact to spring stats. And like, I know that Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson are who they are, and they're probably going to have similar production to last year. But like, I'm not inspired so far by the spring results. Gibson has been awful. Lynn has been awful. I know that we don't have like pitch tracking data in all these parks, but from what I've heard from smart people like Kareem, it hasn't been good so far. Kareem said bye too. So now I know I'm saying something smart. Like it's been tough. The Gray stuff, I really think he's going to be healthy by opening day. So that's not as big a deal. And then maybe we get helped out by some reinforcements from the minor leagues, like Gordon Graceffo or something like that. Zach Thompson has looked really good. Yeah, Seth B points out that Michaelis has looked better. I agree with that, actually. Michaelis has been pretty encouraging. He's gotten some strikeouts, which I really appreciate. But I'm going to buy. I think it's worse than we thought, and I more than ever wish the Cardinals would just freaking invest in another pitcher, but they're not going to do that, and that ship sailed months ago.
Yeah, I'll soft sell because it's weird, like Gibson and Lynn both are like, oh, okay, this is not looking good. But I'm also kind of like, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be that bad. Like I thought they're going to be innings eaters that you hope give like go 6 innings, 7 innings, give up 4 runs, like whatever. Then the bullpen locks it down. Michaelis has looked better than I thought. Michaelis was the guy I was least confident in.
Yeah.
So like that's what gives me a little bit like, oh, interesting. And then now also that Gray is, I feel like it's gonna be ready opening day. We don't know yet, but he seems like he'll either be ready opening day, they'll bump his start back a little bit, or he'll miss 1 start. Okay, whatever. I'm not gonna freak out missing 1 start.
Yeah.
But again, this is a soft sell. I could be easily convinced on the buy side. And then also I like what Zach Thompson's looked like so far. Liberators look decent. Like I feel like I'm lower on how he's looked, but like he looks better than, to me, he looks like a better option than he did last year, which is raising the floor a little bit reinforcements wise. And then like, I don't know. I don't think Graceffo is ready yet, but I just think that's why I feel like it's fine. I don't think it looks better than I thought it'd be. That's cool. That's for sure. I just think it's about what I thought. And then I think Kareem brings a good point. It's like the Lynn Gibson stuff's redundant, but it's what they did. So I think in an ideal world, one of those two fades into the bullpen or fades into oblivion, and Zach Thompson can run with the role. But we'll see what happens. So
are either of them even like capable of having a bullpen role though? If you're talking about it, like I don't want a reliever who gives up a lot of home runs if that's Lance Lynn, and I don't want a reliever like Gibson where the only source of value comes from the fact that he's going to throw 180 innings, because you're not doing that in the bullpen. You're throwing a lot less. And if you have, I
didn't want to say I hope they get injured, but that's kind of what I'm saying.
Now you sound like Andrew. He's not even here. He can't even defend himself.
It's more so, it's just like I would rather have Zach Thompson in the rotation, but they're not going to demote one of them to the bullpen. So you basically have to hope they like are DFA worthy, which is not good. So I don't hope that bad. Or that they get hurt. And so
I don't want to hope that either.
Yeah, me either. So anyways, I feel fine about it. I feel the exact same I did going into the year. It's not sexy. It's middle of the pack, maybe even slightly below middle of the pack. Gray's going to get you the stuff. I guess maybe the Mats part's the X factor where he hasn't looked great to me, and I was hoping he takes that step forward. So yeah, we'll see. But interesting rotation related news. We haven't talked about this, even though the Cardinals have not been connected at all. Dylan Cease, apparently talks have been up in again. You see the Yankees, the Rangers, and potentially the Padres involved. The asking price that Ken Rosenthal was looking at looks a lot lower than I thought it would be right now. So buy or sell, the Cardinals should try to trade or should pull off a trade for Dylan Cease like in the next week or two.
I mean, buy. I would love to see the Cardinals make some sort of offer for Dylan Cease. It would fix all of what I just said about how I'm frustrated with the rotation and I'm disappointed in where we're going right now. The only problem with that actually is, like you've said, it wouldn't bump Gibson or Lynn out of the rotation. It would probably bump Zach Thompson out, who, in my opinion, and I assume in yours too, has been more exciting than either of them. Or it could bump Matt's out because we know he's capable of filling a bullpen role, which isn't that great either, because Matt's last year on a rate basis was like a lot better than Dylan Cease. So maybe you're not even fixing the problem at that point. But I don't know. I would say buy. It sounds like the asking price has come way down. Henderson Wellman Agency points out that his command has gone downhill, and that's true, but he led the league in walks, even in his season where he finished second in Cy Young voting. He just has enough strikeout stuff to get around those. But I really like Cease. I'm buying, especially if you can extend him.
Yeah, I think I was expecting this to maybe come up in the chat. Like, what's the package? And that's the tough part. If the package is similar to what the Rangers reported one is, so that was Duran, that was Porter, and that was Leiter. So to me, that's like Sajayce's better than Porter or than Duran to me, but I feel like there's not really a good comp, and it's not gonna be Donovan. So, and it's probably not gonna be Edman because he's hurt.
Yeah.
So I would
Duran
go.
had a better season than I thought last year. I looked at those numbers because my first thing was like, maybe it's Cesar Prieto, but no, he's actually
better than
actually
that.
kind of good.
Yeah. So I think the uncertainty, because Sajayce hasn't played the big league level, like probably gives him a dink a little bit. So I put like, it's probably like Sajayce and then Graceffo and Jerpy. Like, is that what we're looking at? Because it's not Tekoa Roby and Tink Hence. Like, I don't think Porter or Leiter are top 100 prospects anywhere.
No, Leiter stinks. He's such a bust, dude.
So that's where I think, again, it's so hard to know, because it's like the Athletics with the Cardinals and the Sean Murphy thing. They're asking for Nootbaar and Donovan, and then they settled for Asturias and like all this random crap. Like, okay. So like, if it's similar, like 1-to-1, and it's like it's like Sajayce, Graceffo, and like Jerpy or McGreevy, or I don't know who it is, then I think I buy, because they need an ace so bad. Well, not an ace. I don't think Dylan Cease is an ace, but they need like a number 1, number 2 type to pair with Gray so bad. But Cream brings a good point. Jerpy's looked really good. I'd still like Graceffo, and I love Thomas Sajayce. So it'd be painful, but like, that's what you have to pay to get a player of this price, because the Yankees want him and they're very motivated to get him. The Rangers want him and they're also motivated to get him. The Padres, I don't know why they want to give up prospects right now, but apparently they're interested. Maybe Alec Burleson, Ray. That's a good point. Like, he might carry some value. I don't think he could be the centerpiece of it, but maybe it doesn't have to be 2 pitchers and a position player. Maybe, I don't know. So I soft buy, like, or a buy assuming the price. It's just, you always do that. I'm not giving up multiple top prospects right now because they've already kind of made their bed at the rotation. And I think, I personally, again, if you have the belief that it's not good enough to like compete toward the deadline, then you make this deal right now. But if you're like me and you think they could be in the mix by the deadline, then if the White Sox asking price is really high, then I'd rather just wait to see what my options are at the deadline. But that's a tough one. I see the argument both ways. But yeah, the rotation is just not good enough. So I get the point of making that move. And you have them under control for 2 years. So that's nice. But
yeah.
So I know I said we're move off the outfield, but I do want to come back to it real quick, and then we've got some other ones, because I don't think we talked about this. I think it's kind of interesting. Is buy or sell Lars Nootbaar's injury prone? I think it's a real question now.
I'm selling it still, but we're getting close. He has so many weird injuries. That's what's so frustrating. This is such a stupid injury. It's so odd. Lars Nootbaar lays out for a ball, and his elbow hits his ribs too hard, and 2 of them are broken now. Like, that's really odd. But I don't know. This also kind of feels like a fragile moment where it's like, does every player get hurt when they dive? No. Lars Nootbaar had that finger injury last year that was super weird. So I'm still selling it, but I'm closer to buying it than I've been in the past.
Yeah, I'm selling it too, but like, it's also like, I mean, the naysayers this offseason were like, well, he needs to play in the games. He doesn't play enough games. And I'm like, well, he's missed games for dumb reasons, so that won't happen again. And then it happened again. So, I mean, it happened one time. If every year, I mean, if someone has a weird injury every year, then I'm not going to call him injury prone if you miss a week every year. Like, that happens.
Sure.
But if he comes back and plays for like a month and then has like a weird broke his toe because someone stepped on it, like, then it's going to be like, okay, this might not be good. But yeah, right now I'm not gonna buy he's injury prone. But I do think it's something where I'm my like if I would my concern level coming into this year was like a 3. Like it's like, okay, he's fine. Now it's maybe like a 4 or a 5 with injuries.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't love this, but I still think it's fine, but it's starting to edge toward that. So
I'll say though,
yeah.
it's very different from the Tyler O'Neill injuries. Like
Oh, for sure.
The O'Neill injuries were like he pulled a muscle in his leg for the 37th time. And that's the
For
type of thing
sure.
where it's like, okay, how are you training? How are you preparing for games? And are you really injured or are you hurt? Those were the injuries where it's concerning. It's stuff that happens again, like a pitcher with an elbow or shoulder injury, like
Yep.
Casey Mize. Like Casey Mize is injury prone for the Tigers. That's just a fact. But Lars Nootbaar, none of these are like the recurring type of injury. They're all like isolated incidents. So I'm still saying no. If we were seeing like, quad strain, oh no, this is the 3rd time in the last calendar year, then I'd be really, really concerned.
Agreed. I totally agree with you on that. Okay, so then moving with the offense a little bit more here. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it because I have pretty strong opinion on this, but buy or sell, the offense might not be elite. So obviously the conversation from this would be that coming into the offseason, or at least coming into spring training, the Cardinals were a top 8 offense going into or before the trade deadline last year, and pretty much every major offensive category. Words are hard. But then Donovan was done for the year with his injury, and then they started to sell off pieces and they fell off. And so most of us thought when Jordan Walker is your projected 7th hole hitter, then you're probably a pretty elite lineup right now. But the offense has just been really slow in spring training. Sandy, buy or sell, offense might not be elite.
I'm selling it. I think if we
good.
let like
buying that.
No, if we let like 15 games in spring color how we feel about a team, like that's crazy. The sample size is tiny. It's also spring training. We're not seeing our guys get a lot of at bats. Like, I'm sorry. I'm also not excited. I don't get jazzed up when I see Archimedes Gamboa ground out to second base for the 3rd time today. But like that doesn't change my opinion on how Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado are going to perform this year. So I'm selling.
Yeah.
I think it's honestly a dumb conversation. I don't really care that I don't like that it's happening right now. So yeah, easy sell for me.
I totally agree. I mean, I just think like Donovan's gonna be great. I mean, you got Gorman, you got Goldschmidt, you've got Arenado, you've got Contreras, you've got seriously, like, I mean, how many teams can you start rattling off 7 players where
You can't.
any of them
Like,
could hit
a
3 in your
few.
lineup? And it's not because it's so bad that it's like who could hit 3? Anyone
Yeah, like
could, because we're
Oakland.
the
Anyone could hit 3 there.
It's like, oh, Jordan Walker could be so good that he's the 3-hole hitter, or he could be your 7th hitter. Same with Goldie, same with Arenado. And sure, there's a scenario we saw it last year where people get injured and a couple have underperformances and some are too streaky. And so then it's like it almost feels like the collective whole is less than the sum of its, like the sum of its parts is not adding up here. I could see that scenario happening where it's like, yeah, okay, it's like leaves a little bit to be desired. But overall, I'm like, this is potentially a top 5 unit in baseball. I would err on that side, but they have to prove it.
Sure.
But I mean, you've got Goldie coming back. I know his spring hasn't looked great all the time, but again, I'm not really that concerned.
He's a slow starter.
Arenado, Contreras, Walker, Gorman, Donovan, Nootbaar. I mean, Victor Scott's not going to be like an elite hitter, but man, like stealing the extra base to make a single into a double or a double into a triple or single into a triple and scoring from first on things and wreaking havoc, getting better pitches for other players. Mason Wynn taking a step forward. Offense is going to be fine. And honestly, if it's not, then the season's over. Like if the offense is not good, then they're bad.
They're horrible if the offense is bad.
Totally. And then again, you have like people try like to hate on Alec Burleson, but man, like that's a good bat to have off your bench, in my opinion. And again, Matt Carpenter is not going to play a lot. It's not going to happen. It's not the Taylor Mounder situation. He was the backup shortstop. He had to play. They didn't have a backup shortstop. They have like 5 guys that could play first base. They have a bunch of guys who can play third base. They have a bunch of guys who can play second base. Carpenter's not playing, and they're not going to just randomly DH him because why not? Like they're like maybe in the getaway game once a week, like sure, but that's not going to happen. And Brandon Crawford playing once a week, okay, whatever. I don't care. Ivan Herrera is a significant upgrade over Andrew Kisner. Offense can be fine. So let's calm down. And then maybe on the more optimistic side, something that we thought maybe could happen. but it's starting to percolate a little bit, maybe get some legs to it. And again, if you have some buy or sells you want to throw in the chat, go ahead and do that now because we're kind of coming to the end of our list here. But buy or sell, Sandy, the bullpen could be one of the best in baseball this year. Now, we're not necessarily saying it's the best, but like one of the best, let's say at least top 10, but like maybe higher. I'm buying too.
Yeah, this bullpen is really good. How many other bullpens in baseball can you list off 4 guys with real, relevant, recent closing experience? Like a lot of teams just don't have that depth in the bullpen. There's a real like 4-headed monster at the back of this Cardinals bullpen. We saw Jojo Romero step into a closer's role last year and thrive before an injury, which was tough. We've seen Ryan Helsley be, if not the best, like the second best reliever in all of baseball. All of baseball. There are hundreds of relievers in baseball, and he's that good. We've seen like Giovanni Gallegos be elite. There's an argument that Gallegos was the best reliever in all of baseball like 4 years ago. Now, he's not the same guy anymore, but he's still really good. There's so much to like here. And then you kind of get into some of these more niche names. I'm a big fan of Keenan Middleton and Andrew Kittredge, both of whom have relevant back-end experience. I'm a massive fan of Riley O'Brien. Riley O'Brien has been so fun to watch this spring. Oh my gosh. There's so much life to his fastball.
Fernandez, which Kareem's put in there.
Kareem's throwing him in there. Ryan Fernandez, Nick Robertson. All these guys have interesting pitches. It's not like the bullpens of the past where the Cardinals have had like a couple of high-end relievers and then a couple of guys who you're like, okay, he's going to be in the bullpen, but do I really want him there? Guys who aren't that interesting. No, there are tons of interesting players here. There are more interesting players than spots. I haven't even said Andre Palante's name, and I'm already past the 8 we get. So like, you know, that death ball that he's developed looks awesome. And it's been really good in spring. Yeah. So I don't even, it's an embarrassment of riches at the back end for the Cardinals. There's every chance this is a top 5 bullpen in all of baseball at the end of the year.
Totally agree. And I think Ray put it in, JoJo's been a bit concerning, which is true. But I think that's part of the beauty of this bullpen is that there are so many options now that it's like last year. So I just put out a story on RR recently looking at like what happened in April. And one of the major problems was the bullpen's overall stats looked actually pretty good. I was surprised. And then I looked at the individuals. Helsley had a bad month. Hicks was unplayable. He was horrible. Zach Thompson was supposed to be one of their elite high leverage guys. He had like a 4.7 ERA, which as a reliever in 1 month is not good. Giovanni Gallegos was really good, but like he was the only guy who was on out of their premier guys. And then that was like the story all last year was Helsley was good, but no one else was. Gio was good, but no one else was. JoJo was good, but no one else was. Jordan Hicks was good, but no one else was. They never had more than like 2 guys at a time they could rely on. Now, if JoJo's not good, I'm pretty confident that at least 2 or 3 of Helsley, Gallegos, Kittredge, Middleton, Palante, O'Brien, or Fernandez will be good. Like, you can look at all 8 of those guys, and honestly, if Ryan Fernandez is throwing the 8th inning, I'm not concerned. And like, if you told me last year that the 8th guy in the bullpen was throwing in the 8th inning for the Cardinals, I would be like, oh man, I don't want to see Jacob Barnes out there right now. Like, what is happening? So that, and then like you said, we haven't even named Matthew Liberatore could be in there. Zach Thompson could be in there. Nick Robertson could be in there. Gordon Graceffo could be in there. Like Josh James,
Andre Canio could get in there.
Yeah, like there's just so many names, and so I'm not going to go out and say, oh, JoJo's the guy this year. I don't know. Who knows? Playing bullpen is like, it's like the lottery. You just kind of put a bunch of guys in there. And that's why I love what they finally did. They finally went out and instead of paying for a big guy, which they've done a few times, or they went and got Andrew Miller or Brett Cecil, they went out and got a bunch of guys with interesting stuff. And some of them are not going to be good. But like Kareem said, Wilkin Rodriguez has good stuff. It's legit. But like maybe he's bad. Okay, whatever. They've got 12 other options. I feel really good about this bullpen. And so like I'm not going to tell you that this 8-man group is going to be the 8-man group in the postseason because injuries happen, underperformance happens. I'm sure they'll add bullpen arms as the year goes on. But like going into opening day, it's probably going to be Ryan Helsley, Giovanni Gallegos, Andrew Kittredge, Keenan Middleton, and JoJo as like your 5 high leverage guys.
Oh gosh.
And then your 3 guys that are on the like outside looking in the bullpen that like maybe pitch middle innings are Andre Palante, whose death ball looks great, Riley O'Brien, whose stuff looks nasty, and Ryan Fernandez, who's been awesome. And Nick Robertson starts in AAA. Zach Thompson might start in AAA. Matthew Liberatore might start in AAA. Graceffo, all these guys. I'm really excited. And then I think that's why I'm not concerned about the rotation as much, because your bullpen goes further than 8 deep. And so
Yeah,
you get into a game where you only get 5 innings from your starter, or only 6 innings, or your club is down by 2 runs because it's 4-2 in the 6th inning. I trust this bullpen to lock it down. So I feel really good about this team right now. And this is sneaky. It is the Heim effect. I think you're right. We need to point to that more. The lineup is postseason ready to me. The bullpen is World Series ready to me. And I would say the lineup is potentially World Series ready to me. If this club can go out, now we're thinking way too far in advance right now. I get it.
sure.
But like, I see the pieces for this bullpen being one that can compete in the postseason with any bullpen. This lineup being one that can compete with any lineup in the postseason. You've got Sonny Gray already. I could see a scenario where this team is sneaky going into the postseason, like the Diamondbacks or the Phillies in past years, where they weren't the juggernaut, but they're a team that can go deep. Now they have to get to the postseason. And that's actually kind of where I agree with the Mosaic, is it's like, hey, get this team to October, because if you add that one piece at the deadline or 2 pieces, oh boy, like I'm excited about this. So that's me on the optimistic side. I don't see the bullpen being bad. I see it being a lot better than last year. If it's elite and the offense is really, really good or elite, then okay. I'm just saying. So anyways, I just went off there. So I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, this is the Heim Bloom effect. This is a guy who built amazing bullpens in Tampa Bay, kind of revamped the bullpen in Boston. And what he does, and what his guys have done in the past, is focus on pitchers who do one thing really well. And you can see that. Like, you can see why they liked Riley O'Brien. Riley O'Brien throws 2 pitches that are elite. And so they're going
yes.
to harness that, and they're going to use that. They found him at the, languishing at the bottom of the Mariners roster, not being used. So what did they do? They grabbed him for nothing. And now he looks great. He's going to make the roster. Like, Andre Palante had something that they identified, and they said, if you fix this, you could become a really good pitcher. And what did he do? He went out and developed this death ball all offseason. And now we're super excited to see him whip it out. Nick Robertson does one thing really well. Like, all these guys have something to love about them. Whereas in the past, the Cardinals have had guys like, I don't know, at like Drew Verhagen. Like, he didn't do anything that well. He kind of just was there. Jacob
Yeah.
Barnes, Casey Lawrence, like, these guys were just there. They were just along for the ride. And it was hard to get excited. I was nervous when they came into the game.
Mhm.
I just don't feel that with anybody in this bullpen. I think
Can
that
I,
there's a real chance it's top 5 easily.
can I name you all of the guys that won't make the opening day roster in the bullpen?
Yeah.
Nick Robertson, John King, which I'm actually not high on John King, but I know he had good stats last year. Wilkin Rodriguez, Logan Sawyer, Ryan Lotus, Andre Granillo. Now let's go to the starting pitchers. That's 6 bullpen guys. Matthew Liberatore, potentially Zach Thompson. That's 8. Gordon Graceffo, 9. Honestly, I mean, if they really had to at some point, they could bring up Tink Hence or Cooper Jerpy. That's 11 guys I can name right now that, like, now I'm saying all those guys could be closers or high leverage guys, but like, could any of these guys slide in as your 7th best reliever, 8th best reliever? Probably. So I'm just saying, like, this feels a lot better. And like, they did have some solid relievers like Stratton and Verhagen last year, but again, it was
I like
like,
Stratton a lot.
yeah. And I feel like that the problem they're missing is like, they didn't have reliable high leverage guys most of the year. They had 1 at most, maybe 2 at a time, but usually just 1. Then they had a couple of middle inning guys that they liked, but they're not guys you want closing games or in the 8th inning or 7th inning much. And then they really didn't have depth. Now they have depth, they have high leverage guys, and they have middle innings guys that are like, I would say, like, high ceiling middle innings guys, which Verhagen, his stuff always looked really good. It just never came together. But
Yeah.
anyways,
The real
so
question here, is there a chance the Cardinals miss the volume they got from Stratton and Verhagen? Stratton and Verhagen in Stratton's 1 full year with the team, he pitched like 75 innings. And in Verhagen's last season, he threw over 60. Is there a chance that those 110 innings will give Stratton 20 the year before? Is there a chance they really miss that? I think there's a real possibility they do, but also they kind of make up for it with all the depth they have now. Like, you can shuttle guys around. You're not super worried about it. You can have, like, the Cardinals bullpens of the past that were so good had guys that no one remembers, like Seth Elledge, who were just getting shuffled around. They're in Memphis
yeah.
one day, they're with the big league club the next day, and we didn't really see that last year. Now we have a chance to see that again. And so I'm not as worried about the volume being gone, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think something people miss on with options is when you send a guy down, you use their option year, but you don't use an option every time. You can send them
Correct.
up and down 5 different times. So, like, you could I think that's where you're right, like, they might utilize a bullpen guy for a week or 2, and then they're like, "Hey, we need to shuffle this up to get some fresh arms." They call up, uh Robertson and Liberatore, and they send down Palante, and they send
Yep.
down like, they could do that, but then I do think, like, Andre Palante is a guy that could potentially give you multi-innings at times. Um, Andrew Kittredge, I think, could maybe get you 2. I think JoJo could potentially get you 2. Who knows about O'Brien? So I think they make up for a little bit in terms of that, but then also last year too, they really, really, really needed guys to cover multiple innings because they weren't getting long starts. You're hoping this year you're getting 6, 7 inning starts a lot of time, and then you're trying to cover 3 innings with 8 guys. So that's where I'm not too concerned about it, especially because you can call guys up and down. I think it's fair to wonder though, and maybe that's like kind of guy they target at some point is getting one guy in the bullpen that's like, we feel good going multi innings. But I think that's kind of Palante right now. So
yeah,
see,
no, that's true. I'm not worried about Palante's like volume at all. I think he could be decent.
Yeah. So let's do a couple in the chat real quick, and then we'll wrap up the episode. And again, if you're listening, thanks for listening and subscribing on any audio platform you're on. If you're watching YouTube right now, please hit the subscribe button. Again, we've got interviews, whether it's players like Victor Scott or the Katie Woos and Jeff Jones of the world, or it's us just kind of talking Cardinals baseball. We always love having stuff go on here. I thought this was an interesting one from Kareem. I'm losing it. Here it is. Buy or sell, Ivan Herrera will have over 300 plate appearances in 2024.
That's kind of hard. I'm gonna buy it.
Okay.
But that's because of the way that I have repeatedly voiced, the way that I've repeatedly said the Cardinals should run the team. And I don't know if they're actually going to run it the way I want them to, but I've talked a lot about a full-time share between Herrera and Contreras. I think Herrera brings more to the table defensively. I don't even think you can argue that anymore. And I think as the year goes on, especially if there are problems with Contreras' defense, they're going to turn more to Herrera. He might take on more responsibility, and I'd be all for that. So I think it's good if Herrera gets that many plate appearances. I think it means he's hitting well and playing well. I think he's good. I think he's very talented. The post hype on him is crazy. Like, he's being slept on all around the league. People are forgetting that he was an elite prospect and that he had an awesome year last year. So yeah, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah, maybe this is a helpful comp. I'll buy it as well, but I don't think I'm gonna buy it as in like significantly over 300. I think that's a really good line. That was a really good line, Kareem. I think it's really hard to pick. I'll go slightly over. Andrew Kisner had 224 plate appearances last year. I don't know how much. I didn't look at Herrera's or Trace Barrera last year. But if you combine
Herrera only had
those,
37 at bats last year.
Okay, so that's 250 between the two of them. And then let's look at, okay, it's only 2. So like that's about 50 more at bats. But then you also factor in Wilson was removed from catching duties for a little bit, which is only like 2 weeks, but still that was like 2 weeks missed of at bats. So I would hit right about 300, I think makes sense. I kind of think Wilson's going to, like, there's a part of me that thinks Wilson's going to catch a little bit more than he did last year, but I don't think it's like, I don't know. It's tough. It's a really good line. I'll go slightly over. I could see it being slightly under though. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But then maybe I think this might be our last sell, but I think it's an interesting one as well. Buy or sell, despite Council's title of best bullpen manager, the Cardinals bullpen will outperform the Cubs. I love it. You can
I'm buying it.
One,
we have a better bullpen than the Cubs do, so I'm buying it.
Yeah.
The Cubs have some interesting arms. I think Alzolay could take a step forward. He's fun at the back end. But, like, I'm buying this. I don't think the Cubs have the depth the Cardinals have. They also, like, Ryan Helsley's better than anybody in their bullpen, and it's not close. Ryan Helsley is a top 3 reliever in all of baseball. So, yeah, I'm going to buy it. I'm super high on the Cardinals bullpen. I think we have a better bullpen than the Cubs do, so I think it'll outperform theirs. No matter how well Council shuffles those arms around, it doesn't make them better. It doesn't give them a Ryan Helsley.
Yep, I'm in agreement because I think you also had with the Brewers, like you just had all these really interesting young arms you could throw, and like let's be honest, you had Devin Williams and Josh Hader
That's
at one
not
point.
fair.
That's really
Yeah.
in baseball. So it's like, and I'm not saying like Henderson Wellman didn't realize that. I'm just saying like sometimes people are like, oh, he's the bullpen god. And it's like, well, when you also have two of the best in baseball, it's pretty easy to know, hey, I'm going to go Devin
You had a
Williams in the eighth.
reliever who won Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
You literally had a reliever.
So,
like, that doesn't happen. There aren't guys that break into the league like that.
Yeah.
So.
But I'm trying not to undersell either. I do think Craig Counsell, like, deservedly so has that title. He just knows how to pull the right strings at the right time. And it's something that opposing players and managers have pointed out, where it's like they know Counsell's annoying with how good he is at it. And like, he's just the guy that knows exactly when to start warming up a guy. And so like, I think he can help that bullpen play above its talent, but I just think the Cardinals' bullpen's too talented.
Too good.
And yeah, I mean, you might be a bit joking there, but I think it's just another like people pick the Cubs over the Cardinals right now. I just am like, okay, the Cardinals bullpen's better. The rotations, I'd give the edge to the Cubs, but it's not like world like leaps and bounds better.
It depends how good
Cardinals
Steele
lineup.
is.
Yeah, and the Cardinals lineup I think is a big upgrade over the Cubs lineup. And then the defense, I think the Cubs is one of the best in baseball, and the Cardinals is hopefully better, like a better top half of baseball, but it's not going to be the Cubs defense probably. So I give them the edge, but they feel like, to me, like what the Cardinals were in like 2018, 2017, 2019, when like they couldn't hit, which I think they can hit more than the Cardinals could back then. Their pitching was really well. It's actually, it's I just think they're going to finish around the same, where it's like 80 win team, 81, 82, 83. But I just think the Cardinals are better. So
the Cubs ceiling is low. That offense just doesn't have the pop to win 90 games. That's my take here. So
so we'll have to see. I'm getting excited for the season. I'm ready for real games to happen, for real baseball to matter.
We're so close.
We're so close. But until then, got more content on the way. Obviously, we've got our typical Sunday episode coming up soon. Well, soon as in Sunday. So, but yeah, stay tuned on Twitter. You can follow Sandy Mac 718, myself, Josh, Jaco, MLB. Seriously though, please subscribe if you're listening, or if you're watching for the first time, or just kind of enjoy our content, want to keep it going. We've experimented with some fun videos recently of like long extended lists, and we've got some long form videos that we're doing soon too that we're pretty excited about. So stay tuned for the regular podcast, all the other stuff. And we just love and appreciate the sport. So thank you, anyone who's listening. It's so fun to talk Cardinal baseball, and we're very thankful that you would listen to us as we're talking spring training. And we're so really excited for the season. Kareem brings a great point. It's spring breakout on Friday, and we're going to have on Redbird Rants, you can a free live stream to watch it, which is super exciting. So if you don't have access to MLB Network or ESPN, I think it's the other platform that has it, you can actually just watch it on Redbird Rants. So it's a cool partnership we're able to pull off. So if you're interested in watching spring breakout, see a lot of these Cardinals top prospects play, check that out on Friday. I know we'll be watching. It'll be really fun. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.